S.S.S. Vaeira, Tovshin Pei Beis. We are now beginning Geulas Mitzrayim this week. The Makkos, as you know, begin this week's Parsha. But at the beginning of the Parsha, Hashem says that I have heard Klal Yisrael crying out. I have heard them calling out to me about the Shibud Mitzrayim, and the Torah tells us the following pasuk: V'gam ani shamati es na'akas b'nei Yisrael asher Mitzrayim ma'avidim oisom vo'ezkoir es brisi. That Hashem is saying, I heard es na'akas b'nei Yisrael. I hear the cries, Bnei Yisrael crying out, Asher Mitzrayim Ma'avidim Oisam. And the Nesivos Shalom brings down Sforim HaKdoshim, in particular the Degel Machne Ephraim, and also the Sefer Oyev Yisrael from the Apta, and they focus on this word of Asher Mitzrayim Ma'avidim Oisam. Why does the pasuk use a lashon of Ma'avidim as opposed to a lashon? The normal lashon to be used here would be oivdim, that they're making them work. Ma'avidim seems to be a more general, more that they are totally enslaved. Asher Mitzrayim Ma'avidim oisam. So Nesivos Shalom explains, when we get into why the lashon of Ma'avidim and not oivdim, he explains in a way where we focus in on what was unique about Golos Mitzrayim. Why was Golos Mitzrayim different than any other Golos? We all know, we say in the Haggadah something very interesting, and everyone's going to remember this, everyone's going to know this from Pesach. We say in the Haggadah, Ve'ilu lo yhoitzi HaKadosh Baruch Hu es avoseinu mi Mitzrayim. Had Hashem not taken us out of Mitzrayim, harei anu uvaneinu, we and our children, uvanei vaneinu and our children's children, mishubadim ayinu lefar b'Mitzrayim. We say that had Hashem, one of the reasons that we are so glad that we got out of Mitzrayim, the Haggadah tells us, is that had Hashem not taken us out of Mitzrayim, we would all be still, Harayanu vanenu vnei vanenu mishubadim ayinu lefar b'Mitzrayim, that we would still be mishubad to Paray Mitzrayim. Nesivos Shalom asks, why is this one of the great milas? Why is this one of the great things about getting out of Mitzrayim? I mean, does it make a difference to you that we're not Meshubah to Mitzrayim today? What's the difference? We've gone into other Goliaths. We went to Golos Bavel. We went Golos Yavan. Today we're in Golos Edom. What's the difference to you if you're Golos in Mitzrayim or Golos in America? It's no difference. We're still in Golos. So why do we say that had we not gotten out of Mitzrayim, we would still be in Golos Mitzrayim? We're in a different Golos today. Now we're in Golos 2. What's so great about the fact that we got out of Mitzrayim? What's the big simcha that we are not in Mitzrayim? And the explanation says in the Nesivos Shalom is that Golos Mitzrayim, as we mentioned, was actually very different than the other Goliaths. And you know why? Because in Mitzrayim, we were mishubadim hayinu lefar b'Mitzrayim. What does mishubadim mean? Mishubadim means that Mitzrayim had us enslaved beguf uvaruach. Not only were they working us hard, but we were enslaved, our neshama, not just physical labor, but our nefesh, our ruach, and our neshama were all taken in by Mitzrayim. Like a real slave to a master, where he owns every facet, every part of you. That is what was going on in Mitzrayim. and the Mefarshim say this is when even there was no Mitzri watching you. When they were in Mitzrayim, so you would think that if a Mitzri was on top of them, they felt threatened. They felt that they had to do avodah. They felt that they were enslaved. No, even if no Mitzri was watching them, they were enslaved to the Mitzrim. It was a total beguf uveruach. But by the other Golios, let's say like now in Golos where we are right now, we're stuck. Why are we stuck in Golos? We're stuck because the Goyim are simply a lot more powerful than we are. The Goyim are stronger than we are. We can't do anything. We can't move the world. We can't rebel. We can't do anything different because they're stronger than us. In Mitzrayim it was different. Even if there was no Mitzri watching over a Yid, he still felt like a slave. He felt like his mind, every part of him, was taken in by the Mitzrim. So we say in the Haggadah that if Hashem had not taken us out of that situation, the way that Golus was in Mitzrayim, we wouldn't just be in Golus right now like we are in Golus in Europe, Golus in Chutz La'aretz, Golus in America. It wouldn't mean that we're just in Golus, but we would still have that same thing where we are entrapped by the Mitzrim. We're entrapped by Golus in every facet of our being. We say also in the Haggadah, you'll recognize this too, when we say why we're supposed to be thankful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we say, Lefichach, therefore, anachnu chayavim lahodos, we're chayav to have hodah to Hashem. Why? Because hotziyanu me avdus l'cheros. Hashem took us out from avdus l'cheros, miyoga and l'simcha, ume'evel l'yom tov, ume'afela le'argadol, and we finish off umishibud le'geula. All these things we have to have hodah. We have to be thankful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if you notice, in some of these things that we mention, not all of it applies to everybody. I'll give you an example. Shevet Levi wasn't working in Mitzrayim, so they had different reasons to be thankful. Not every one of these things that we're thanking Hashem for has to do with everyone, except the last one. Umishibud legeula, that encompasses every person in Klal Yisrael, because we were so meshubad to the Klipas Mitzrayim. Every Jew was meshubad to the Klipas Mitzrayim. It controlled every single person, and that was the part of Mitzrayim that made it the toughest gullus of them all. The Divrei Shmuel says, the pasuk tells us when they cried out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Vatal Shavosam El Ha'elikim Min Ha'avoida. What does it mean, Min Ha'avoida? That the Iker crying out, Vatal Shavosam Elikim, the Iker crying out that he did to HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Min Ha'avoida. From the fact that the Tam and Avodas Hashem was taken away from them. The Tam and Avodas Hashem was not there anymore. And the reason for that was because they were totally meshubad to Mitzrayim. They didn't feel anything anymore. They had this total goyisha outlook. They were totally consumed by the gullus around them in Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim accompanied them in every one of their actions. And we know, the Mefarshim tell us that when we got to Har Sinai, the Mefarshim tell us by Kabbalah Torah, they got out of that type of Shiva Mitzrayim and they became back Meshubah to Hashem Yisbarach. Chazal tell us, Paska Zu Amasan, that this aura of Tumah that was around them left them when they got to Har Sinai, that they were able to connect HaKadosh Baruch Hu once again. And really the lesson we need to learn from here is that we need to know for ourselves that this inyan of Golus Mitzrayim and the Shibud, the all-encompassing Shibud that came along with Golus Mitzrayim, it doesn't just apply to a Golus of a Klal. It applies to an individual Golus, a Golus of a Prat, the same way it applies to Klal Yisrael, it applies to each individual also. And there are times that a Jew will be in Golus in the hands of a Yetzer Hara. What's an individual Golus? We don't just talk about Golus of not being in Eretz Yisrael, of being away from the Beis HaMikdash. That, of course, is Golus of the Klal. But Golus of a Prat is that sometimes a person individually feels like you're in Golus, that the Yetzer Hara, you're in the hands of the Yetzer Hara. You're in your own personal Golus. But you need to know that the Yetzer Hara is not content with just that. What he wants, what the Yetzer Hara wants, he doesn't just want to make a person slip up to do an Aveira. The Yetzer Hara wants control of all of the person, of every part of a person. He wants control of your thoughts. He wants control of your Torah. That when you learn Torah, it shouldn't be for the right reasons and in the right way. He wants control of your tefillah, that when you're trying to have kavanah, when you're trying to daven, when you're trying to concentrate, when you're trying to be in awe of standing in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Yetzer Hara wants control of that. He doesn't just want a person to slip up. He wants a person to totally be meshubah to him, meshubah to the Yetzer Hara, just like we were in Mitzrayim, a klipas Mitzrayim, to be totally subservient where you are not in control. The Saba Kadisha Milechevich, Zechutza Yogan Aleinu, Nesivos Shalom brings him down that he would say, very interesting, when he was young and he was saying Berchas HaShachar and he was davening in the morning, he would spend hours each morning saying, V'choif es yitzreinu lihishtabed loch. That we should only be subservient to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You spend hours having kavanah just on that sentence. Okay, you understand? We say it in 1 second. If we're lucky, we even notice that we said it, we say it just for 1 second. But the idea is there, that there were such Yidden that understood that when we're in Golus and there's a Yetzer Hara around you, our tefillah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is v'chayf es yitzreinu lihishtabed loch, that we should be subservient only to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that is really what mitzvahs tefillin is all about. We say by mitzvahs tefillin, l'shabed bazeh tavos u'machshavos libenu, that our avodah is, once again, l'shabed, a shibud to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that is really our avodah in Olam Hazeh. What we can do when we're in Golus, what we can do when we're here, is to understand it's one thing not to be nispoil and not to be influenced from our surroundings, from the culture of the Goyim, from the styles of the Goyim, from the way they act. It's one thing not to be influenced by them. But it's another thing, another step, that we have to be careful that we never get to the point where we're enslaved and accountable to the corrupt culture that surrounds us. And that is the Golus HaPrat. That's the Golus Mitzrayim. It's not something that was in the history. Golus Mitzrayim was different because it encompassed our guf and our ruach. We are all guilty of the same thing sometimes. We're not just doing things wrong in Golus, but we're allowing the culture that's around us to control and to really drive what we do and how we act, our own personal Shibud Mitzrayim. So the Pasuk tells us, Asher Mitzrayim Ma'avidim Oisam, they're totally enslaved. They've unfortunately fallen in to the Yetzer Hara, where they're being controlled by that. And what we have to daven, v'choyf es yitzreinu l'shtabelach, we daven for the Golus HaKlal always, but we especially have in mind also the Golus HaPrat, to be free from the outside influence and to know that we are in control. It's not our surroundings, it's not our Golus. When we win back control, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take us out of this Golus.